Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to see the seats filling up as people return from holiday, and it's great to start seeing familiar faces again. Parents, I'm sure you're looking forward to offloading your children to the schools this coming week. Your relief is my grief. Because it's a reminder that my holidays are rapidly coming to an end, and I've really enjoyed the time that I've had to refresh and rejuvenate. So hopefully I'll be ready for Wednesday of next week. Todd Beamer, Mark Bingham, and Tom Burnett had never met prior to boarding Flight 93 out of Newark, bound for San Francisco. But on that morning of September 11, 2001, only minutes from disaster, these three men would act as one in an attempt to foil the plans of hijackers who had very quickly taken over their plane soon after liftoff. When they learned via mobile phone of the fate of the other three hijacked flights in New York City and Washington, D.C., these three men realized that their plane was involved in a much larger terrorist plot and would likely be used to carry out further strikes. Burnett told his wife over the phone, "I know we're all going to die, but there's three of us who are going to do something about it." Todd Beamer's final words that was overheard by one of the people listening in, his final words became a national catchphrase. "Are you guys ready? Okay, let's roll." During the struggle that followed, Flight 93 crashed into a remote area of Pennsylvania, 20 minutes short of its intended target, which many analysts believe today was either the White House or the Capitol building. While all 40 passengers on Flight 93 were killed, no one on the ground was injured. Of the 4 aircraft hijacked on September 11, Flight 93 was the only one that did not reach its hijackers' intended destination. In coming together in a single all-in moment, the actions of the three men potentially saved hundreds, if not thousands, of lives on the ground. Over the past few months, as I've talked to various leaders around the church, as well as to the pastors, in conversations where we've been planning for 2016, reflecting on developments here in the church, talking about where we would like to see the church going in the future and so on, a common phrase has just kept popping up in my mind and also in conversation, and that phrase is all in. This church is well positioned for continued growth and to become an increasingly more dynamic centre for keeping the story of Jesus alive and ministering to all of the people who we have the privilege of walking through our doors from week to week. Our average attendance numbers are growing, and as Wayne, our senior elder, has reminded us previously, the church has grown stronger under Pastor Andrew's leadership, and now a new chapter in this church's history is beginning with Pastor Moy taking up the mantle of leadership in 2016. Despite all of that, a handful of leaders and one pastor can only do so much. And that's why I want to challenge us all this morning to be all in 2016. I want to echo Todd Beamer's words and suggest that our catchphrase this year may well be, "Are we all in? Okay, let's roll." This idea could have lent itself to just a 3-week series, as we traditionally do, and to have its message sort of eventually forgotten and lost amidst the flurry of messages that get delivered from this pulpit week after week. And so after talking with Moy and with the worship team, we decided to do something that we haven't done before, and that's to make All In an ongoing theme for the entire year. A theme that will inform many of the sermons to come, not every week, obviously, but one that we will circle back to on a regular basis as a way of keeping this idea alive in 2016, that all of us, leaders as well as attenders alike, we all need to be all in. In a way, we've been preparing for this kind of emphasis now for a number of years as I trace back down the many sermon series that we've had in the past. And I want to just take a quick moment to refresh your memory of some of these characters who we have built series around over the last 5-6 years that I've been here anyway. People like Jeremiah. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. And so I say to myself, the Lord is my portion, therefore I will wait for him. I am all in. Jonathan says to his armor bearer, come, let's go, let's take on these Philistines. To which the armor bearer replies, go ahead. I am with you, heart and soul. I'm all in. Joshua, choose for yourselves this day who you will serve, but as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. We are all in with the Lord. Nehemiah, you see the trouble we are in? Jerusalem lies in ruins and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be a disgrace. Casting vision, let's be all in and build this wall again. Where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. And finally, Caleb. We should go up and take possession of the land, for we can do it. As well as all of these Bible characters that we've visited over the years, history is full of people who were all in, who have made a difference, who have been consumed by a passion to change something, to improve something, to build, to set and achieve a goal. Every one of us here in life, we have to commit to something, right? Every day you and I make decisions and say things that are either building a noble and worthy life or a shallow, self-centered one. Like Todd Beamer, Mark Bingham and Tom Burnett, we don't always get a choice in how or when we will die. But what we do get to choose is how we will live, even if, in their case, it was only for another 30 minutes. I want to spend the rest of this talk this morning looking at two attributes of the all-in life, two specific elements that characterize being all in. And the first of those two attributes is commitment. History gives us many, many examples of committed individuals. One of the greatest examples of commitment that I've always enjoyed reading about is the courage of the British fighter pilots during World War II. The odds seemed hopelessly stacked against Britain in the summer of 1940. One by one, the countries of Western Europe had fallen. Poland, Austria, Czechoslovakia, France, the Netherlands, leaving Great Britain completely alone in its resistance to the Nazis' plans for world domination. Hitler now decided it was Britain's turn. British forces were outnumbered by the Germans in almost every respect. When Winston Churchill, the new Prime Minister, promised his nation and the world that Britain would never surrender, people thought he was mad. Even Franklin D. Roosevelt thought that he had lost his marbles. Germany's plan was simple: destroy the RAF in preparation for a land invasion. Hitler and his generals were riding high on a crest of confidence based on the fact that other countries had capitulated so readily. He was of the view, Hitler, that the RAF would be destroyed in 4 days and that England would fall within a month as a result. And he had every reason to believe that, because he had at his disposal 2,500 fighters and bombers ready to go. Britain had just 700. 700 against 2,500. Well, the rest is history. The Battle of Britain lives on as one of the most phenomenal examples of defensive warfare in the whole of human history. Thanks to the bravery of RAF pilots, many who were only in their early 20s and some who were only 19, these men were sometimes staggeringly sent into battle up to 7 times a day. Rather than being overrun in a month, as Hitler expected, Britain was still doggedly defending itself 3 months later. Yes, it had lost virtually all of its 700 planes, but those planes had also taken down 1,700 German planes. By the time the Battle of Britain was over, the Luftwaffe had been decimated. Hitler was beaten into a humiliating retreat from which his forces would never really recover. Churchill would go on to say that never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. The reason that I pick on that example is because it allows me to talk for a moment about the nature of commitment. Because what fueled the commitment of the British pilots was way more than just simple patriotism. They were fighting for something way more primal than that. They were fighting for the safety of their families, the future of their children, as well as fighting as a result of the realization of what was at stake for Britain. If Britain was to fall, strategically, there would have been no platform upon which to mount a future counterattack against the Nazis. In other words, their commitment to the cause had everything to do with the future. Commitment is always fueled by a vision of the future, or it should be anyway. For us as churchgoers, commitment goes beyond just turning up and filling a seat from week to week. We love it when you do that, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to scare you away. But commitment should flow naturally from the belief that the future could and should look better than it does today. A future where this church continues to thrive and our children grow up learning that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. If you've been coming to Burwood for a while, but haven't yet made this church your own, I'm going to challenge you this morning to become a member, to step up and be an all-in Christian here in this community, committing yourself to the life and the future of Burwood Church. We need your gifts, your talents. We need you to help this church be all that Jesus wants it to be. I'm not telling you anything new when I say that this church is not perfect. We certainly don't claim to be. And, like every other church, Burwood has had its naysayers. Those who, for whatever reason, have decided that we do not represent the ideal that they have in their mind as to what a perfect church should be. Our dress code is too casual. Our music is too loud. We're too relaxed about the exchange of ideas that we allow here, and so on and so on. What those people need to remember is that whatever Burwood's failings, it is still the bride of Christ. It is still a place where God speaks. It is still a place where the Holy Spirit moves. It is still a place where Jesus has promised to manifest himself. Jesus said that he was going to build his church and that the gates of hell would not prevail against it. And he is building right here in this church just as he said he would. If we need a reminder of just how passionately God feels about his church and how protective of it he is, we need to look no further than Acts chapter 5. As you know, the book of Acts and the early chapters record some of the earliest events of the Christian church. And in those days, there was a surge of followers as the disciples and others declared the significance of Christ's life and death. many, many people came and came to be part of the gathering. Individuals began making great sacrifices and laying down their lives for the message of Jesus. Amongst that community were two individuals by the name of Ananias and Sapphira. They got caught up in this wave of excitement. They got a real buzz from hanging out and hanging around this new community. But essentially, these two individuals were only in it for what they could get out of it. They were merely play acting, pretending that they had made huge financial sacrifices for the community, which in fact they had not. The result of their lies was that God struck them both dead. And not surprisingly, the text goes on to say there in chapter 5 of Acts, no one else dared join them, even though they were highly regarded by the people. Why? Why for a time did no one else join the gathering? Because everyone suddenly came to the powerful realization that God was in the middle of this movement and he was going to protect its authenticity and its integrity. People realized suddenly that there was no playing games any longer. They came to understand that this new community called the church demanded all of them or none of them. For a time, no one else dared join the believers because they suddenly realized what the cost would be. They had to be all in or not at all. It was simple as that. Jesus, God, they love their church. Jesus said that the church is the only institution that's guaranteed to stand the test of time. Yeah. Have you looked at the stock market lately? You know, if the church was listed on the stock exchange, it would be at the top of the blue chip shares. Because Jesus said he's going to be managing it. He's going to be growing it. It will never go bankrupt. It will never die out. It's going to be around as long as there is an earth. And it's going to go on paying dividends. And it's certainly appreciating in numbers. When Jesus said that the gates of hell would never prevail against his church and that heaven and earth would pass away, but his words would never pass away, he was establishing prophecies that you and I fulfill every time we commit to and participate in the life of the church. We become mini time capsules, don't we? We become repositories for the words of Jesus to pass on to the next generation, then on to the next. Generations after us who will continue to keep the truth of those very prophecies alive and real. And so again, I say, if you're one of those people who has pitched your tent on the fringes of this church, I would ask you to commit to being part of this church and helping us build for the future, helping us build the kind of church that Jesus promised would become the hope of the world. The second aspect of the all-in life is the word initiative. All-in people seek to make a difference, and they follow that up with action. This is not something just reserved for high-capacity people, those with obvious, well-honed leadership skills. God speaks and works through the most ordinary of people, of which I am one. I think of people like Jane Goodall. You may not know this, but when she left England to go to Africa, she was unemployed. She had no degrees. She had done no tertiary training of any kind. She decided to go to Africa because she, one, passionately loved exotic animals, but she thought that maybe over there she could help out and make a difference by caring for the animals. As we know, 60 years later, she is world famous for her work with chimpanzees, pretty much being credited with saving so many different species of that animal. At one point, she said, as you see on the screen there, you cannot get through a single day without having an impact on the world around you. What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you can make. And she's still now running the Jane Goodall Institute and taking care of chimpanzees at the age of 81. She's given her entire life to research and to the study of chimpanzees. I think of Rosie Batty, who after the murder of her son became an advocate for the victims of domestic violence and a campaigner for the protection of women and children. I'm not sure if you know the stats, but domestic violence has become an insidious evil in our communities. 2 women are killed every week on average, and 1 woman is hospitalised every 3 hours. Rosie decided she just couldn't take those stats anymore and decided that she wanted to do something about it. She says, "It is the ordinary people who make up the world. It seems unless you are skinny, beautiful, or can sing, you struggle to be recognised." The Australian of the Year award is about recognising that ordinary is special. I really like that. God works through ordinary people like Rosie Batty. Rosie had just been a nameless housewife, I guess, prior to the tragedy that occurred in her life, but she has tried to turn that now into something positive. Unfortunately, so often people don't show initiative until some tragedy leaves them feeling so broken that they feel compelled to take action. You can think of things like the Jane McGrath Foundation, the Madeline and Alana Foundation. They have all grown out of tragedy and loss. It's sad in a way that those kinds of initiatives don't occur until something tragic happens. Hopefully this will not be your story or mine, that we will continue to respond to the call to take initiative, to do some good with the gifts that God has given us every day. Taking initiative means offering to help, choosing to do something good before others even realise there's a problem, or before they even see that there's a need for someone to do something. Please consider offering your services to ministries around the church this year. Offer to help rather than waiting to be asked. Ministry leaders, certainly the ones I talk to, are constantly on the lookout for people to help them carry the load. What can you bring to those ministries that will help this church become stronger, more relevant, and to fulfill the mission of Jesus? Follow your heart. God will lead you to the place where he wants you to make the greatest contribution. The story of the early church is one of persecution, but also one of great commitment and great initiative. Though commanded to stop preaching the gospel of Christ on numerous occasions and beaten for doing so, the disciples would continue to respond with the words of Peter's declaration, again back in chapter 5 of Acts. We must obey God rather than man. This is the central confession of the movement of Jesus. And this is the question I want you to grapple with this year as from time to time we return to this theme of being all in. What will you choose? When everything is in ruin and the rest of the world in chaos, what will be your choice? And friends, that's the kind of world that we're heading towards. A time when we are going to have to be able to say, we must obey God rather than man. We must live our lives for the interests of God, not the intentions of men. It will become increasingly harder to be a follower of Jesus in the future. There is no doubt about that. But Jesus never said that he came here to make your life or my life easy, but to give our lives meaning. He never came to give us safety and security, but he came to give us significance and purpose, and that's more important. We need that more than anything else. What would it look like if everybody was all in? What would happen in the course of human history if every one of us was to embrace those words of Jesus, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind? And what would happen in this moment, in this time, in this place in human history if all of us, without shame or reservation, would step into this life that Jesus calls us to with such faith and courage and bravery, so that Jesus could do everything that he's ever longed to do through us and in us? What would it look like if you were all in? The marvelous reality is that God is already all in for you. Jesus is already all in for us. The only thing waiting for fulfillment is whether we will choose to be all in for him. This much I know, and I don't know a lot. You will never know all that is in you until you are all in. All the gifts and the talents, all the intellect, all the passion, all your capacities, all that God desires to do in you and through you will never be unleashed as a gift to this world until you lay yourself at the feet of Jesus and say, I'm yours. I'm all in. What might a declaration like that sound like? Well, it might sound something like this. And I've asked some friends to come and help me out.
Today, I'm stepping across the line.
I'm tired of my own insincerity, and I'm finished with wavering.
I've made my choice. The verdict is in. And my decision is irrevocable. I'm going God's way. There's no turning back now.
I will live the rest of my life serving God's purposes, with God's people, on God's planet, for God's glory.
I will use my life to celebrate his presence, cultivate his character, participate in his family, demonstrate his love, and communicate his word.
Since my past has been forgiven, and I have a purpose for living and a home awaiting in heaven, I refuse to waste any more time or energy on any shallow thing.
Petty thinking,
Trivial thinking,
Thoughtless doing,
useless regretting.
hurtful resenting.
or faithless worrying.
Instead, I will magnify God, grow to maturity, serve in ministry, and fulfill my mission in the membership of this family.
Because this life is preparation for the next, I will value worship over wealth.
We over me.
Character over comfort.
Service over status.
And people over possessions, position and pleasures.
I know what matters most, and I'll give it all I've got. I'll do the best I can with what I have for Jesus Christ today.
I won't be captivated by culture, manipulated by critics, motivated by praise.
Frustrated by problems, debilitated by temptation, or intimidated by evil.
I'll keep running my race with my eyes on the goal, not the sidelines or those running beside me.
When times get tough and I get tired, I won't back up, back off, back down, back out, or backslide.
I'll just keep moving forward by God's grace. I'm spirit-led, purpose-driven, and mission-focused, so I cannot be bought.
I will not be compromised.
And I shall not quit until I finish the race.
I am a trophy of God's amazing grace, so I will be gracious to everyone.
Grateful for every day, and generous with everything that God entrusts to me.
To my Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ, I say, however, whenever, wherever, and whatever you ask me to do, my answer in advance is yes, I'm all in.
Wherever you lead and whatever the cost, I'm ready. I'm all in.
Anytime,
Anywhere,
any way.
Whatever it takes, Lord, whatever it takes. I want to be used by you in such a way that on that final day, I'll hear you say,
Well done, good and faithful one.
Come on in and let the eternal party begin.